Chris, it's great to meet you. Thanks so much for joining Let's Parent on Purpose. It's really an honor to have you.
Thank you, Jay. And that's such a perfect name for a podcast, especially given what we're going to be talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, I would like to say it was my first thought, but it's more like what's available on website and podcasts and all of that.
Right.
But it really does speak to what we're trying to do, which is be intentional with our walk with Jesus, with our marriages, and then with making disciples that will thrive in their walk with the Lord. And what we're going to talk about today, I feel like can be one of the greatest pitfalls in a
Mm,
parent and
yep.
child life for that. But God willing, there should be a lot of, it could be a springboard as well, depending on how it's navigated. So, will you tell me first and foremost about Protect Young Eyes, the organization that you run?
Sure. So it's about the fourth thing that I ever thought I'd be doing, Jay. I'm a CPA by trade. I worked in business consulting for about 12 years. And out of that, the Lord jettisoned me into youth ministry, which was a total 180, right? I mean, imagine, senior manager at Ernst and Young, helping big companies avoid business problems and now go to junior high ministry. So that's what I was called to. And the time frame for that, Jay, is really important. So I started my journey in youth ministry full time in 2009 and did that until 2016. And that is the rise of portable internet, right? We
Mhm.
had internet, but it was always on a desktop in a public
Right.
place. You couldn't carry it with you. It was big and bulky and slow. Now we could put it in their pockets. So the joke I kind of make is, I had a box full of hoodies and Bibles that kids left at youth group all the time, but nobody ever left me their new prized possession, which was their iPhone 5 that mom was handing
Yeah.
down or dad was handing down. And they just had no idea. And this is still the age of techno optimism. I feel like even in 2026, with all we know, there are still people who are like, yeah, get the new thing, download the new thing. And we still believe the marketing that it's always good. Now, there are parts of it that are good. The parts are getting slimmer and slimmer. But back in 2012 and 13, when kids were downloading all the apps and Instagram and Snapchat for the first time, parents just had no idea.
Right.
And I mean, social media has been bad for young humans for a really long time. But Jay, it was the Wild West in 2013, 2014. And, I had come out of compulsive use of pornography as a young adult due to exposure as a young child, kind of carried that into the internet age, right? Like a lot of guys my age had put that monster aside through Christ and accountability and then watched us give it to kids. So it's just sort
Mhm.
of that whole journey where I'm like, all right, I got to do something. Consultant is a brain that is see a problem, fix a problem. Wait, this is a problem. We just put porn in every kid's pocket and 100 million people. I got to fix this. And that became some education locally at my church with my parents, launching a website in 2015. After a stint with Covenant Eyes, which is a software that a lot of
Mhm.
people maybe recognize, especially through ministry, I was the digital marketing manager there for about 6 or 7 years. That was a software I had used. That was kind of post ministry. And then for the past 2 years, I've been full time, all in on the education, keeping parents informed, do a lot of live talks. I do a lot with policy. Just last night, 3 hours on this massive bill that is going to be proposed in Congress to find out what can and can't work. I do a lot of that also. Never expected to be on this journey. But, as a dad of four, I've got teen sons and a young adult daughter, married to Andrea for 26 years. I'm a dad like you, stumbling and bumbling through the digital age. But I believe God has called me, given that experience, given my own misery that has been transformed into victory and ministry. Right now, this is it. These are my years. So I'm going to give God the best I can. So
That's great. And your new book will be out in just a few days. I think what's the June, what is the release date?
June 16.
That's my birthday. So that's great for you to line it up
What?
right there.
This
Yeah,
is
man.
perfect. Yes, yes.
So the 5 habits of the tech ready family. It's a fantastic resource. I've really enjoyed digging into it. And
Cool.
in the
Thank
in
you.
the beginning of this book, Chris, you've kind of alluded to it. You begin the book by saying that we are in an experiment that none of us signed up for. So would you elaborate on that? What do you mean by that? We're in an experiment that none of us signed up for.
That's right. And I spend some time, see, somebody, and this probably just comes from my consulting background, where the best way to figure out where you're going is to understand how you got to where you are. So there's always this sort of present state analysis that I was trained to perform when I was analyzing a process or a business, so that we could figure out how to avoid the current pitfalls as we move toward the desired future state, right? Same is true with technology. There are certain things that happen historically in culture with technology that have contributed to where we are today. And I allude to some of those sort of in the beginning, in the introduction, around sort of what was going on in our country, certain key news events. For me, Columbine, 9/11, other events that were broadcast live, flashing, breaking news for the very first time. We're living it as it's happening, which contributes to a bit of a psyche for us, I believe, as a country, and for us as parents, that there is a little bit more danger around every corner. I mean, Jay, you and I both know the world has been a dumpster fire since Genesis 3. It's just we didn't know about all of it.
Yeah, exactly.
We weren't aware of what was happening in the Straits of Hormuz or whatever, like instantly. Like, that's just the difference. And that's a tough spot to be in as a parent. Then you combine that with technology that blew anything away we had seen. And at the beginning, it was good. It was promised to be good. And so you combine this, everything's maybe a little bit more dangerous. And then here comes something we can attach to our kids to be in touch and to know where they are and to communicate with them all the time. It was sort of this perfect storm of incredible technology that preyed on this vulnerability in sort of the arc of parenting, that I feel like a really unfortunate coincidence. And now here we are today, still trying to recover from some of those promises, right? In the book, I allude to the speech of Steve Jobs in 2007 when he releases the iPhone, and all of the optimism and amazing things that humanity was going to experience now that we didn't have to carry a separate digital camera and Franklin Planner and Palm Pilot and all these separate things. BlackBerry, right? It was all one device.
Right.
And that seemed great. Well, but when you carry everything with you, you feel everything. And we never really realized that at the time. And then we put that burden on kids, and no wonder they're a little bit confused and anxious and depressed from what they're experiencing. So that history to me is really important, so we don't recommit the sins of the past, because here comes AI like a freight train,
Right.
following the exact same sort of big tobacco playbook on get into society, lie about what's going on, make it seem great, pour billions into marketing and lobbying and deceive. And we're in the same cycle. But this is even more complicated because now it's geopolitical. Social media wasn't geopolitical. AI is. And we've got to get in front of it if we're going to help our kids navigate what's coming.
I have shared with our students in youth ministry, hey, sometimes you got to give mom and dad some grace, because typically the way you figure out how to parent is you think back to your childhood, you remember what your mom and dad did, and you either say, well, they did a good job with it, or they did a really bad job, and I either I want to repeat what they did, or I want to modify from it. But we are now in a whole context that I have no frame of reference for. Like,
that's right.
My mom and dad had to monitor 3 telephones in the house that were attached to a wall. You could literally pick up and listen in on somebody else's phone call if you wanted to.
Right.
And you basically had, depending on the length of the cord, 10 to 15 feet of freedom and privacy. You could maybe go around a corner. I didn't even get internet until I was in college. And so now my whole generation is flying blind on these devices, that it's not a phone. Like, a phone is maybe 10th down the list of what this thing is. And so I don't have a frame of reference. Everything is kind of flying blind. Like you said, it's an experiment. And so, as parents, sometimes we have to radically adapt when we realize there's some kind of major danger. But unfortunately, it's hard to see that danger as it's happening. Kids have unlimited access and undeveloped brains. And so this creates a real danger for us. So what you give an illustration that I thought was really good on a backpack, and like the illustration of a parent loading up a backpack. Would you care to share that? Because I think it just
Sure.
really stands out what we're expecting of children.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, I just recently reshared this on social media because I'm a guy who needs to kind of put digital realities into analog frames. It helps us make a lot of sense of things when you take something we do digitally, which has just sort of become normal, and wait, back it up and go, what if I did that same thing in an analog context? Oh my gosh, that makes no sense at
Mhm.
all. And I think this illustration is an example of that. So imagine going back, and I'm Gen X, so you'll hear a lot of Gen X illustrations here for just a minute. And I had a backpack that I was getting ready to take to school. And in that backpack, Jay, was my history book, maybe a notebook and things to write with pencils and pens. And before I walk out the door, my mom says, wait, I've got a few more things to put in your backpack. And she puts in my Walkman, my CDs, a digital camera, pictures of all my friends, my baseball cards, my Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card, maybe a basketball TV with a DVD player on it, the one at the front, all my DVDs, Mad Magazine, comics, 5 porn magazines, then zips it all up and says, here you go, Chris, take this to school instead. Now, you're only allowed to touch your history book, notebook, and pencils, even though I just put all these entertaining and awesome things inside of your bag, but don't touch any of it. And your friends, they've all got this stuff in there too, and their parents have different rules. They can probably even look at the porn if they want, but you're not allowed to look at any of their things either. And if I catch you looking at the stuff in your backpack or the stuff in their backpack, you're grounded for a month. Have a great day at school.
Yeah.
Like, that's exactly what it's like when a kid has a school issued iPad or a smartphone or a Chromebook. And the statement that I make that I hope grounds us and maybe shifts us toward empathy instead of judgment and condemnation, because it's really easy to look at kids who misuse technology and get upset and be like, how in the world? But when you understand what we've actually handed them, and we think about that illustration, Jay, we have asked our children to exert a daily level of self-control that we never had as children ourselves.
Yeah. And that most of us can't handle now.
Can't handle now. Yeah. And the joke I kind of make in our parent presentations, I look at the audience after I sometimes give that illustration and say, listen, there are a few of you who would be in prison right now if you had Snapchat in school. like,
Yeah.
like, and joking, not joking, your life would be different. There would be an event in your past that you would remember and go, man, I wish that wouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the burden, the decision burden that kids have every single day, is to avoid that minefield that is out in front of them every single day. The distance between our children today and a life-changing choice that they'll remember when they're old like us is so much thinner than when we were children.
Mm.
It requires so much less effort than when we were children. Accidentally, it can happen with such great probability that wasn't possible when you and I were kids. And that's the difference.
And when it happens, and it will, it's, a parental emotional reaction is often, anger at them. It's their fault. Or anger at myself. It's my fault. But we need to realize there's a third party involved in this. I mean, that third party is a huge entity. It's not just one single individual.
That's right.
But to understand that we're not the consumer, we're the commodity in this whole transaction. That there is a third party, and that this stuff is by design. Would you speak to, because I know you have a lot of background information on this, that there is an intentional pursuit of
That's right.
our children. And I would love to hear you talk about that.
Most of the digital places, Jay, that our kids enjoy have an entirely different goal in mind than we do. I don't care what Disney princess is on the front, what cute cat is in the video. They all are built, and this is why that history is important to understand, especially as we move very quickly toward AI. The exact same business model that is behind all the apps that we love, which, by the way, were free. Okay,
Mhm.
so think of it from a business perspective. How can a business who allows you to do something for free, how can we today have the largest businesses that have ever existed in the history of humankind? Trillions of dollars in market capitalization. How can they do that with something that's free? Well, that's because they're found a way to monetize us, our worth. We have something they value, which is attention, human
Mhm.
attention. Our children have human attention. And now here comes AI, and it's not just our attention. They want that, but they want deeper. They want affection. They want connection with that heart, a relationship. That's the whole purpose of AI companions, is to develop a relationship. And so all the big companies, over there in Silicon Valley, they understand our children. They understand the heart and mind of our child. And so we need to frame, and like you said, remember who we're really mad at. Who are we really angry with when our child sends, shares, snaps, does something? Let's remember, we're the ones that put God-like technology in their pockets,
Mm.
expecting them to win the battle against MIT-trained software engineers, against PhDs, against technologists who are brilliant. We've expected our kids to win that battle every single click and tap every single day. And when they don't, we get mad at them. To me, that's misplaced anger. Instead of getting upset at your daughter, be mad at the developer. Instead of being angry at your son, be mad at the software engineer. Should we have consequences when they make mistakes? Absolutely. But let's make sure that we embody grace and then truth. John 1:14 right there, where it says grace and truth, that's Christ. Let's get the order right, where we understand that it could happen to any child, including my amazing son or daughter, that we receive them with love and forgiveness. There's nothing they could say, do, snap, or share online that would change that.
Mm.
That I am your biggest fan. In the middle of this chaos, I am your soft, safe spot to land. We'll get through this together. And I'm taking your phone away. And you might be grounded for a few weeks, because what kind of parent would I be if I let you keep the snake in your pocket that just bit you?
I
Right?
love that.
The order there matters.
Yeah, you're speaking to a question I had as you were talking about it. In a moment of failure, what does grace first parenting look like? Because we're going to have truth in there. But when my child does something shocking, revolting, something that they can't even fathom the long-term consequences of, but I feel them instantly. Or I just find out, my child has now been exposed to and is intrigued with pornography or something like that. There is this visceral reaction
Right.
inside me. But what do I do? How do I react on the outside to my child when one of these things comes up? What does grace first parenting look like in these situations?
Well, as a fellow, although former, your current youth pastor, I remember vividly the messages that we would say to kids, especially when it came to sexual purity. We would say to kids, okay, decide right now kind of what your limits are, what does it mean to be pure, and so forth. Because in the moment, if you haven't decided, your emotions will roll toward a decision that you will likely regret. So it's all about thinking and practicing, engaging that front part of the brain before the middle emotional part of your brain,
Mm-hmm.
where all the dopamine and the feeling takes over. Okay, let's apply that same thinking to parenting, because guess what? Parents also have a limbic system. Parents also have emotions. Parents hate to see their kids hurt and harmed. Therefore, if we are going to respond with grace first, that is not often inherently the easiest response. Therefore, you have to practice responding with grace if that's how you want to respond with grace.
Mm.
So one of the things that I say to parents is, Make a list of all the horrible things you hope never happen to your kid online.
Uh,
Make a list of all of those things. Write it down. Say, I hope they never say this, never send this, never share this, they never see this. This never happens to them. Then go in your room, close the door, look in the mirror, and say each one of those things. And then afterwards, I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to freak out. And then practice it with your spouse. Say those things out loud to him or her. We're not going to freak out. We're not going to freak out. We say digital trust matters. We build digital trust step by step and chat by chat. And we do that by doing certain things. One of them is not freaking out, not freaking out, not freaking out in the midst of their digital crises, Jay, because I'm sure you've experienced this too. When a young person has been discovered or found out or is in the middle of something traumatic, one thing that Silicon Valley knows that we need to know as parents is that middle emotional part of the brain that I talk a lot about in Habit 4, where we delay addictive technologies, is faster than ours. It's 10 times more sensitive. This is why young people have emotions that fluctuate, that they're fine at 7 o'clock and not fine at 7:02, because that middle part of the brain is on fire and under construction. Therefore, things are felt more deeply. All right, layer all of that in with our kids sometimes are going to make a digital mistake. Therefore, in their crisis, things feel horrible. We need to be the soft, safe spot to land. We need to be the calm in the midst of their digital storm. We have to have practiced being that for them long before the storm arrives. And in my experience, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, I have found that in decades of working both in volunteer and full-time ministry, in the middle of a problem, young people need to know the answers to 2 questions. They won't ask these questions, but their heart is asking these questions, even if no words are said. Number 1, am I going to be okay? And number 2, are you still okay with me? Even though I'm a screw up, even though I just made a mistake, because there's a little lying voice in their head that loves to steal, destroy, and kill that is telling them they're the screw up. And they're checking with you to see if you agree. Our face answers that question before our words.
yeah.
Our calm, right? So we've got to practice doing that. Otherwise, they'll see right away. I say all the time, they've got radar. They can sense when we're not okay with, they know how they're being judged. So we've got to practice that. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Well, as you were sharing that, I was thinking, I'm blessed to be a student pastor. There have been things that have shifted over time. I started 21 years old. I was barely older than the people I was pastoring. And so kind of looked at as a big brother or a really young uncle. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being cool. Somewhere along the way, I noticed that boys did not initially share like their lust struggles and everything with me as they did. And I noticed it happened to be right about the same time that my oldest daughter was a teenager in youth group. And it's like, oh, this makes sense because they're her peers. And so this can, you don't want to confess to one of the dads of one of the girls in youth group that you're struggling with lust. It's like, okay, so I can get that and adjust. Well, what this means is oftentimes when I hear about something, it's because it's blown out of proportion, and so we try to have a lot of other people working in their lives, younger people that they'll connect with. But here's what I notice. Like, I know this is going to, I don't know which kid it's going to happen to, but I know it's going to happen. It's just kind of a regular, predictable thing. I really love them, but I have a healthy emotional detachment in the sense that with, Bill, who I don't have any Bills in my youth group, so I can use Bill. With Bill, my identity is not wrapped up in Bill's future.
That's right.
Bill doesn't have my last name. And so when Bill, is exposed that Bill blows it, I can be like, oh, that's bad. But I can be there. And it's like, I love Bill just as much as I did 3 minutes before Bill found out that I knew he was a screw up. I already knew Bill was a screw up,
Yeah.
But, now we both know, now it's embarrassing, but I can lead with love. And what I realize is when it's in my own house, there's so much more of my ego and my identity attached to that moment. Like I want to project
Yeah.
so far out,
Right.
and my projections are typically not true. They're, I make concrete things out of hypothetical things. And so much of it, I think, is wrapped up in me because their failure reflects on my parental failure. And what does that say
Right.
about me? And so
Exactly. Yeah.
I like, in that sense, I need to be that semi-detached youth pastor
Yeah.
with my own children in there. And I got to remember, even with my kids, they are God's kids before they're my kids, and I am a steward of them. And ultimately, I grace first. We're going to have to figure out the grace first, truth, and then we have to figure out consequences and boundaries.
Yeah.
But the last thing that they need is the tidal wave of my emotional dump on top of the tidal wave of emotions that they're already feeling. And I can tell you this, Chris, as we're sitting here talking, and I don't have an immediate scenario that happened this morning in my house. So, like, it's really easy to talk about, but I need to practice. I think that's a great analogy. Like in sports, I help coach youth sports with basketball. And it's like, look,
Yeah.
that foul shot is going to come in a pressure situation. And if you wait to practice, when it comes, you're not going to do it. But if you practice ahead of time, like you got it down. And in the same way, I can practice controlling my emotions and go through the what ifs because I don't know which one's going to happen, but I do know it's going to happen. So I think that's great insight.
It is going to happen. And that's why I spent so much time in why the second habit exists, right? Which is to pursue authentic connection. And I spend so much time in the book there in chapter 3 talking about parental anger. I remember one time in a presentation, I was doing this as a webinar. So there was the chat going on while I was presenting. And I had a parent chime in and go, wait, I thought this was a digital safety technology webinar. And I said, it is. Wait, it is.
Yeah.
I could give you a whole list of parental controls and software and charts and graphs about what's wrong with the internet. That's almost the easy part. The part that we've got to get right first is in a disconnected, disembodied, screen-first world, remembering the heart, remembering the connection, remembering the relationship. Those are the levers that create that foundation of digital trust that you can build everything else on. Because there are no amount of software or hardware solutions, Jay, that replace the need for intentional parents that pursue the hearts of their kids.
Amen.
And you and I both know how quickly, and I've read stories about this, and this isn't to create fear or to make any parent feel badly about a harsh conversation, but a few sentences in the wrong way at the wrong time can change a child, good or bad. And so to practice living in the front practiced part of the brain and not the emotional, reactive, visceral part of the brain is absolutely necessary, especially when we've introduced so much digital risk into their lives.
Chris, can we do an overview? We'll take about 10 minutes and do an overview of the 5 habits and just kind of lay those out. Again, this book, The 5 Habits of Tech Ready Family, if we do 10 minutes and you hear these 2 minutes each, that's not going to be enough for it to sink in, but you can at least get a broad overview. And so I would love for you to let's just kind of walk through habit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we'll explore what we need to.
Great. Yeah, and these are tried and tested. I have a team that presents all over the world, in fact, now, and we have shared these habits over and over again, and I've had feedback from parents about this is what works, and love that. And you'll see in the habits, and this is the part that I won't be able to share, obviously, in a conversation like this, but when you read the book, you'll see the real stories. These are real DMs from direct messages through social media and emails. Trust me, as a part of the writing process, I had to go back to all of them and ask permission as to being able to use their content in the book. And so this is real in the trenches stuff. Habit number 1, is we need to model the right behaviors, and that is to start with us, looking at our uses of technology during the day. Now, Jay, you and I both know as busy dads and husbands and professionals that we have to use our technology more than the average 12-year-old. At least we sometimes do, maybe not compared to the amount that they're using social media, but we need to use it, right? We've got sports schedules and grades and all kinds of commitments and meetings that, of course, we are going to use our technology around our children. That is absolutely necessary. But I just want us to be more mindful. And there are very specific tips that I give in there about mindfulness, around boredom as a parent, even around our posture with technology when our kids are with us. How do we talk about what that looks like when they're with us, so they understand that we're not ignoring them playing Candy Crush, for example? So we model the right behaviors, we pursue authentic connection, and I've alluded to that one already just based on the conversation that we had. Bottom line, Jay, a full calendar does not mean fully connected to your child. And we live in a time where a full calendar is pretty prevalent in American society, or wherever you happen to be watching this. I'm sure that you would be able to agree with that. And so we've got to be intentional. And it's in that chapter around habit 2, pursuing authentic connection, that I spent a lot of time about the types of conversations that we need to have, the preparatory conversations that we have before a child goes over to a friend's house, before a child goes to a birthday party, before a child visits someone that we don't know. How do we go have a conversation, curious conversations? How do we prepare our kids for pornography to come to us, right? These are the conversational elements that build that digital trust, chat by chat and step by step. Habit number 3 is we encourage work and play. One of the most, I guess, significant indicators of success as an adult, based on a long-term, decades-long Harvard study, is having a system of chores, doing chores in the house. That's the work part, and there's other stories I share there. And then there's the play part, and getting back to the play-based childhood that Jonathan Haidt talks a lot about in The Anxious Generation too. He's brilliant on that. But just building on that a little bit, the significance of moving your body through time and space. Whether you're a bear or a boy, the way you become a more resilient adult version of yourself is by playing the heck out of your childhood. One of the quotes that I use is, brains are built, not born. Now, of course, we're born with a brain, but you build and wire your brain up through physical activity as a child. There is no such thing as too much movement from birth through about age 10. There's no such thing. School should be fully moving, playing. We sit them in chairs. We wonder why they can't sit still. So that's encourage work and play. Number 4, this is all the brain and the research and the neurology that I've been alluding to. And this is where we delay addictive technologies, not all, but addictive technologies. And then habit 5 is wrapping them in layers of protection. And that's where we diligently prevent harm. So model the right behaviors, pursue authentic connection, encourage work and play. We delay addictive, not all, right? We're a pro-tech, just protect. Right kid, right tech, right time organization. That's delaying the addictive technologies. And then in habit number 5, we wrap them in layers of protection by diligently preventing harm, because that's what it takes. So obviously my background being in business, CPA, kind of left brain spreadsheet guy, you get 5 habits. And then within habit number 5, you get 5 layers of protection. And then in chapter 7, I talk about the 5 layers in society that are supposed to be protecting our children from harm. And so you get those 5s. But to me, something so big and sort of existential like the internet can feel overwhelming. So where I try to be, and people have told us this is what they really appreciate about Protect Young Eyes, is we want to take and bring it to a level that it's understandable. We can break it down into habits. And the reason the habits are important, and then I'll pause because you said kind of 10 minutes each. Jay, there's going to be another app that comes out next week that we haven't thought about. There's going to be something related to AI, which we cover a lot in the book with companions and the dangers and what we need to do with AI. But there's things that I couldn't have predicted in a book that was, printed months or weeks ago. The habits are principles, and these principles are timeless.
Yep.
These are the principles that whatever new app comes out next week, these are the 5 habits you'll be able to apply to it. So that's why I wrote it in the way that I did, is at that 50,000 foot level, so that when something else in the weeds that we don't understand pops up, we can lean back on those habits of pursuing and of connecting and of diligently preventing harm and those sorts of things, because no matter what comes, I think they will still apply. They've stood the test of time through social media, pornography, gaming, right? Even now with AI, and I think they'll stand whatever comes next. So that gives you kind of a broad overview with plenty of appendices, with actual scripts about how to talk about pornography, how to wheel back technology if you've gone too far, all those kinds of step by step. That's where we want to be. So
It's so helpful. And one of the things we're going to put in the show note links that you've provided is this ultimate guide to iPhones and iPads.
Good.
It's called the complete guide to iPhones and iPads. And it is like a PhD dissertation on screen time, which should be the most helpful thing on my phone. But it's probably the most difficult application on my iPhone to actually navigate. And I'm fairly tech savvy.
Sure.
And I can't do it without AI at this point of like, how do I stop this thing or connect this thing? So that's just a free guide that you've created. We'll put that link in the show notes.
Awesome.
I would like to just go back and ask about the last couple of habits. Delay addictive technologies. Can you give maybe some parameters of, okay, what do you mean addictive? And what are there just like age and stages that you would say these are good general guidelines?
Sure. So I'll give a simple illustration just from my own family, right? Maybe just to sort of set things up. Mm-hmm. My children are ages 21, 16, and 14. Okay. I have a set of fraternal twins in there. One has Down syndrome. The other one does not. So Grant is in a whole different sort of lane with technology, because I have to make sure that his curiosities and vulnerabilities are not taken advantage of by technology that doesn't care that he has disability. But his twin brother has an old iPhone of mine. I have it connected through screen time, as you've alluded to, super complicated, has no social media, doesn't want it, admitted to me one time that it looks kind of stressful, so he's trying to avoid it. I agreed with him. I thought that was a great statement. Has a group text thread with, all of his buddies. And although doesn't have social media, doesn't play a lot of video games kind of here and there, he still knows how to code in Python. Like, when we say delay addictive technologies, I'm looking at algorithmic technologies. I'm looking at recommendation engines. I'm looking at the hydra of TikTok that studies each of us to create the most addictive version of that For You feed based on every twitch and wiggle that you commit there inside of the app. That's the kind of manipulation and sort of intentionality that I'm trying to keep out of his life as long as possible. He doesn't need a recommendation engine telling him what to think, telling him what to like, deepening him into these rabbit holes. I want him to be the creator of what he likes, him to be the one with a mind clear enough that through, promptings and just through his own creativity and imagination is thinking about what he likes and what he wants to explore. I don't want it feeding him what he needs to explore. So delaying addictive technologies isn't about bubble wrapping our children, moving to a commune. It's about understanding your child, which is why I spend so much time at the front end of that chapter talking about neurology, the 3 functional areas of the brain that really dictate how we interact with technology. And trust me, Jay, when and anybody listening to this, Silicon Valley understands the 3 functional areas of the brain. Everything that makes social media is intentionally crafted to hook into that middle emotional part of the brain that all of our teenagers have. When you look at the like or the heart or anything, that's super critical. So when you understand what's going on in their brain, then you understand why certain technologies become addictive. And that leads to us having a posture of empathy instead of judgment when they make mistakes. Why? Because it's the software engineer or it's the PhD scientist that is actually making decisions based on my kid's brain. I need to be mad at them. It's not my kid's fault that their brain is created the way that they are. That's just the way that they are. And so that's all of what's going on there in habit 4, ending then with some very practical things that we can do around reacting a certain way, around teaching our kids how to navigate those technologies, around putting things out in the light that we're freaked out about so we diffuse the power that those certain applications have over our kids. Those are the things that, we've got to get right to understand them so that we know when they make mistakes, what's actually going on.
The last habit 5, digitally prevent harm. This is one of those, I feel like you need a considerable amount of effort on the front end, and then you absolutely need a maintenance mode happening. For, let's say, a family's like, for some reason, they haven't thought anything about digitally preventing harm for their kids. On the front end, like, realistically speaking, how much time, effort, and energy do you think it's going to take for a mom and dad? Let's say they have teenage kids. On the front end, like, how much investment should they anticipate they need to make to begin to fortify the harms coming at their kid?
Well, and this is where within habit 5, you have these 5 layers of protection. And so just depending on what, for the parent listening to this, who's maybe in the situation you just described, depending on sort of where your stress tolerance is, less is better. And so maybe it's, of those 5 layers, tackle a layer a week. And so layer 1 is based on that relationship, that building digital trust. Pick one statement that you're going to say to your child multiple times this week, and make that the statement that they know so well that they're rolling their eyes and finishing your sentences, around inviting them into you being that safe place to land. Right? Just say that for a week, find little spots to say it, remind them, say, I know you heard me say it before, I'm going to say it again, then say it. And then after you've gotten a little bit of confidence because that went okay, then you move on to the next layer, which is the Wi-Fi layer. Now, the Wi-Fi layer, because it's the router, that's often a spot that increases some blood pressure in people because you don't understand that dumb thing. But we've written a very helpful post that parents can read just to sort of understand how that works. And maybe you spend a couple of weeks on figuring out how to lock down your home network. So my overall point, without walking through all 5 of the layers, is less is best, slow is king, and just walk through them. That's why I've laid them out kind of numerically. I use that kind of pyramid diagram so you can just kind of check them off as you go. There are examples of each of them as you go, but take it slow.
I love that. Chris has been incredibly helpful. I appreciate your honesty. You've spent a lot of time in this, and you're in the journey with us as well. So it's one of these, when do you become an expert on parenting? After all of your kids are with Jesus and you're with Jesus, and maybe at that point, because no matter how many kids you've parented, you've never parented these children in this age of time. And so we are all kind of fumbling forward together. It needs to be grace-based. So I appreciate, we don't want to panic. We do want to have a plan. And this has been really helpful. 5 Habits of a Tech-Ready Family book comes out June 16th. And in addition to that, your website, where would you direct people to find the best one-stop shop for the resources that you guys provide for mom and dad?
Yeah, most of it's free. I'm told that I give away too much, and I'm okay with that label. ProtectYoungEyes.com, all the device guides, our research, app reviews, downloads for having certain conversations. It's all right there. And most of it you can just get to anytime that you want to. And so that's another spot, depending on kind of where you're at. A little bit of self-help can be there, but that kind of 10 years of experience and stories and tips and ideas in that one spot is what you'll find in the book. And if you want the audio version, know that I just finished recording it, and you'll get my voice too for that.
That's great.
So yeah, it's multiple ways that you should be able to find that no matter where you buy books.
Yeah. Thank you. And hey, let's close by just praying for moms and dads as they navigate this. Would you mind leading us in prayer for those who?
Absolutely.
Because I always feel like if somebody's listening to the dead end of a podcast, they are hooked. They're in. They need this.
They're here.
You are praying for those who most needed to hear this conversation right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Lord, thank you for the ways in which we can use technology to share helpful and encouraging information, Lord, for the homes listening, for the parents listening. Lord, we know that you care deeply for their family, for the children that you've entrusted to them. God, give them a vision for a step to take. Give them the wisdom to know that step. Give them the calm in the middle of that step. Give them the outcome from that step, Lord, that you build on. God, you navigate this. You're not surprised by our technology if we just lean into you, lean into your goodness, lean into your grace first approach with us. God, I pray that that would be our approach with our amazing children. So thank you for this ministry. And I pray, Lord, that you would just carry this word out to as many who can listen to hear. And when they take action, God, that you would bless that with your Holy Spirit to make it stick. So appreciate this time, God. We love you. We need you. And I ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Chris, thanks so much.
Thanks, Jay.